now confessing to killing his wife Shanann and their two daughters, Bella and Celeste.
It came in a jailhouse confession and featured in a Dr. Phil exclusive today right here on News 5. Our Sam Kramer taking a closer look at what we heard today. Sam.
Yeah, guys, well, that confession coming in a 5-hour interview last week with the FBI, CBI, and Frederick police at a Wisconsin prison, then relayed to lawyers for Shanann's parents. As for why it made the show, Dr. Phil says he wants to clear Shanann's name and honor all of the victims.
Bella walked in and asked, "What are you doing with Mommy?"
She knew something was wrong.
Almost 7 months later, Chris Watts finally confessing to killing his wife Shanann and two daughters Bella and Celeste, the crime happening after he admitted to having an affair and wanted a divorce.
And she had said something to the effect of, "Well, you're not going to see the kids again." As a consequence of that conversation, he strangled her to death.
The story shared on Dr. Phil through attorneys for Shanann's parents, a way of debunking Chris's first story that Shanann killed their daughters.
These tapes put to rest any of that kind of speculation, and that Shanann's memory can be put to rest as a loving mother and a caring wife.
And providing some closure for the family.
There's so much of this that happens that we become a little hardened to it and a little immune, and they want people to know this was our daughter, these were our grandchildren, we loved them, they were real people.
They say he wrapped Shanann's body in a sheet and put it in his truck, told his daughters their mom was sick and needed to go to the hospital, driving 45 minutes to an oil field. His rampage wasn't over while preparing to bury Shanann's body.
He walks over and takes Cece's, Celeste's, favorite blanket and smothers her to death.
Their daughter Bella pleading for her life.
At that point, Bella said, "Please, Daddy, do not do to me what you just did to Cece."
Before the same happened to her. 3 life terms and 84 years for those murders. Dr. Phil will air part 2 in an interview with Shanann's parents coming up on Monday.
Killer. That's Chris Watts' mistress, Nichol Kessinger, blowing him kisses and professing her love for him.
I'm having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me. And I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath.
The video, recorded just weeks before Watts murdered his wife and 2 daughters, was uncovered by Kyle Peltz, is the show's producer.
There's photos and videos of them on a secret trip to the Great Sand Dunes while Shanann and Chris's 2 baby girls were away on vacation.
There you go, baby.
That's Watts you hear behind the camera.
You're so damn sexy.
HLN also obtained voicemail messages Nichol Kessinger left for Watts. She giggles like a schoolgirl.
Hi. It's me. I miss your face. I was just calling to say hi.
Watts also took these provocative photos of his 30-year-old co-worker. He stored them in a hidden folder on his smartphone.
He hides this on an app called Secret Calculator. It looks and functions like a regular calculator, but when you enter 4 digits, it's a secret vault. It opens up and it reveals hidden photos and videos.
Watts claims he came clean about the affair to his pregnant wife Shanann the night he killed her and their daughters. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave and dumped his girls in silos of crude oil. The mistress told cops she had no idea he was planning to murder his family.
This shocked me just as much as I think it shocked the rest of the world.
Watts is serving
August 14th, 2018-9:08 a.m. in Denver, Colorado. She walked in through the front doors of the police station. Alone. With no lawyer. No breakdown. No panic. She didn't ask what happened. She asked if her name would be on the record. But she wasn't on any missing persons list, and was never a suspect. She wasn't even invited. But somehow, she became the person everyone wanted answers from. The headlines called it a family tragedy. But before the world saw the news, she was already deleting messages. Before the press had a name, she was already Googling hers. And before the man confessed, he said her name first. This isn't about the man who killed. It's about the woman he was willing to kill for. The one who never touched a weapon, but changed everything anyway. Her name is Nichol Kessinger. And this story was never just his. Before her name ever became a target, before people pointed at her face like it explained what someone else did, Nichol Kessinger was just another quiet woman going to work, paying her rent, and hoping for something real, at least what we believe to have been the case. She was born in Colorado, raised in a place where people keep to themselves, where you don't need to stand out to live well, and where silence doesn't raise suspicion, it earns respect. She studied geology because it made sense to her, the layers, the pressure, the way time shapes everything. She didn't chase attention. She didn't need to be seen. She liked facts, routines, and systems that didn't lie. When she got hired at Anadarko Petroleum, no one whispered about her in the break room. She wasn't loud or social, but she wasn't rude either. Co-workers said she was intelligent, focused, and reserved, someone who stayed in her lane and kept her work clean. She came in early, left on time, and didn't linger in parking lots talking about her weekend. No one there knew what her living room looked like, what kind of music she liked, or how she felt about her past. They just knew she got her work done and didn't cause problems. Her life wasn't exciting, but it was hers. She lived in a quiet apartment near Denver, not fancy, not big, just simple and safe. She worked out sometimes, ate frozen dinners, and spent most evenings with her phone and a TV she didn't always finish watching. There was nothing strange about her, and maybe that's what makes this so strange. Because the world didn't see her coming, but when it did, it wouldn't let go. She wasn't the kind of person you'd expect to be part of something dark. She didn't have a record, didn't make enemies, and didn't hang around people who made trouble. But you don't always need a plan to end up in the middle of one. Sometimes all it takes is a name in your contact list, and the wrong person knowing it. Nichol had been in relationships before. Some hurt her. Some faded out. None of them followed her home. But she would always believe that maybe the next one would feel different. She still believed that people told the truth when they said they were done with their past. To the people she worked with, she was predictable. But predictable doesn't mean known. And not one of them, not a single coworker, neighbor, or friend, could have guessed that weeks later, her name would be the one everyone remembered, and no one could agree on. Because it's easy to say someone's innocent when you like them. It's easy to call them guilty when you don't. But the truth is, most people didn't really know Nichol Kessinger at all. They just knew what happened after she got involved with the wrong man, and what she did before he got caught. Sometimes, it's not what a person says. It's what they don't correct. It's the silence between their words. And what that silence starts to sound like when the whole country is listening. She never wore red flags. She wore gym clothes and a ponytail. She talked about starting over. She thought she had time. But now, her name is etched into one of the most disturbing crimes in recent memory. Not because she pulled a trigger, or because she planned anything, but because she knew the man who did. And because he said, he did it for her. Have you ever worked beside someone, quiet, friendly, maybe even kind, who changed your life without warning? She met him at work. That's where it started, not in a bar, not online, not by chance, but in a hallway at Anadarko Petroleum. His name was Chris Whatstad. He worked in operations, she worked in environmental safety. Their paths didn't cross often, but when they did, she noticed he was polite, quiet, and easy to talk to. He smiled a lot, and he always seemed like he had time. At first, it was small talk, worksite reports, schedules, equipment. There was nothing strange about it. It felt casual, normal, even friendly. But then it became something else. He started showing up more. He lingered near her office. He asked questions that had nothing to do with work. By late June, she learned he was married, but he told her it was over. Not just ending, over. He said he was separated, that the divorce was almost done, and that they were living in the same house only for the sake of their kids. He made it sound like they barely spoke anymore. She later said he described it as final, like the papers were already in motion. She believed him. There was no reason not to, or so it seemed. He didn't wear his wedding ring around her, and he never mentioned his wife by name. He told her he was staying in the basement, that they slept in different rooms, and that it had been like that for a long time. She asked a few questions, but she didn't push. He gave her answers, and she accepted them. By early July, they were texting outside work. They met up a few times. They spent time together in private. And whatever it wasn't yet, it felt like it was becoming something. He told her she made him feel free. He said he hadn't been himself in years. He said she was the first person who listened, who understood him. And who didn't judge him for wanting something better. They talked about starting over. He made it sound like he was already halfway there. He said he wanted peace. He said he wanted simplicity. He said he wanted her. They kept seeing each other through July. She would later tell investigators that she believed everything he said. And maybe she did. Because he wasn't acting like a man with loose ends. He was acting like someone who had already let go. Their connection got deeper fast. They texted often, more than most couples do in their first few weeks. He responded quickly, sometimes within seconds, and his messages weren't casual. He called her beautiful. He said he felt safe with her. He told her she was different, and that he hadn't smiled this much in years. She didn't go to work bragging about it. She didn't tell her friends. She didn't post pictures or mark anniversaries. She kept it quiet, partly because it was new, and partly because she trusted what he said about his situation. She thought it was private. She didn't think it was dangerous. And even if there were things that didn't fully add up, like why his divorce wasn't done yet, or why he always seemed to be texting from his truck, she chose to believe him. Because when people say the right things, and when they say them often enough, it's easy to stop asking the questions that might ruin it. They spoke more on the phone. They met more often in person. They shared moments that felt real. And while the rest of the world kept spinning, two people in an office romance began imagining what life might look like, without anyone else in it. If someone told you their marriage was over, and you believed them, would you stop to double-check, or would you keep going? 5 days had passed since the man she had been seeing went on camera and begged for his family's return. He stood in front of reporters with his arms crossed and said he didn't know where they were. He said he missed his daughters. He said he just wanted them home. But Nichol Kessinger had already seen enough. She watched him speak. She saw how calm he looked. And she knew something wasn't right. So on August 15, 2018, she walked into the Thornton Police Department and asked to speak with detectives. She didn't bring a lawyer. She didn't ask for privacy. She said she had information, and she said she wanted to help. From the beginning, she was clear about one thing: if I had known she was pregnant, she said, I would have never gotten involved with him. She told them she met Chris Watts at work in June. That he said his marriage was over. That he made her believe the divorce was almost final. And she believed him. Not because she wanted to be fooled, but because he didn't act like a man with secrets. But as investigators opened her phone and traced her searches, the version she gave didn't match what her browser remembered. On July 24, nearly 3 weeks before Shanann Watts and her daughters went missing, Nichol Kessinger Googled the name Shanann Watts. She searched it again the very next day. And this wasn't out of shock or grief. This was before any of it happened. Before the police got involved. Before Chris Watts ever said anyone was missing. She had said she didn't know Shanann was pregnant. But Shanann's Facebook page, the one Nichol searched, had pregnancy photos. It had baby announcements. It had her due date. And that wasn't all. On August 8, just 5 days before Shanann and the girls were last seen, Nichol searched for the name Amber Fry. Amber Fry was Scott Peterson's mistress. She became the face of media shame after Peterson murdered his pregnant wife. Nichol didn't deny the search. But she told detectives it was just curiosity. She said she was trying to understand what happens when private relationships become public mistakes. Then came the deletions. In the hours after Chris claimed his family was missing, Nichol wiped her phone. She erased every text message. She cleared her call logs. She removed photos and browser history. By the time police had questions, there was no trace of the relationship left on her screen. When asked why, she didn't hesitate. She said, "I deleted those messages because I was scared, not because she knew anything had happened. Not because she was hiding evidence. But because she didn't want to be dragged through the mud." She said she felt tricked. She said she felt used. And she said she didn't want her name linked to something she didn't do. But panic doesn't always come with planning. And the way she moved, quick deletions, careful answers, and no contact with Chris after the news broke, made people wonder if she was protecting herself from judgment, or from something else. She told them she never asked where Shannon went. She didn't call after the disappearance. She didn't press him for answers. She said she was shocked. But the evidence said she had searched for Shannon weeks earlier, and that she had searched for a woman whose lover became a killer. And she did both before anyone called it a crime. Investigators noticed how measured she was. She wasn't cold. She wasn't emotional. But she was steady, too steady for someone who just realized her boyfriend's family was gone. They asked her to explain again. She repeated her words slowly, clearly, and without hesitation. "I didn't know she was pregnant, that I didn't know anything, that I thought he was getting divorced, but data doesn't lie. Search engines don't forget. And timelines don't move to make people more comfortable." She wasn't arrested. She wasn't charged. She didn't break any laws. But the deeper they looked, the more the public asked, if she knew enough to erase everything, then what else did she know? Because when someone deletes their digital life before the crime scene is even discovered, it stops sounding like fear, and starts looking like preparation. She told the police she panicked. She told them she didn't know. But the truth doesn't delete that easily. And guilt doesn't always leave fingerprints. Sometimes, it just leaves questions. If your partner's family vanished without warning, would you clean your phone, or call the police? Before she walked into the police station, before she gave a statement, before she said she didn't know anything, her browser had already started telling a different story. It didn't speak in full sentences. It didn't lie or twist words. It just showed what she looked for, when she looked for it, and how long she stayed there before closing the page. On July 25, 2018, Nichol Kessinger picked up her phone and typed, "Man I'm having an affair with says hell leave his wife." She didn't ask if it was wrong. She didn't search for how to end it. She searched for confirmation, a mirror that would tell her she wasn't the only one in this position. It was a private moment, but it wasn't innocent. Because just days before, she had already been browsing Sean and Watt's Facebook profile, clicking through posts, photos, pregnancy updates. And the woman she claimed to know nothing about, was right there in front of her screen. Then came the search that no one could explain away. On August 4th, 9 days before Shannon disappeared, Nichol spent 45 minutes reading guides about how to prepare for anal sex. She never mentioned it in her interviews. Police didn't ask, but the browser kept the timestamp. 45 minutes on sites that weren't casual, and not scientific. These were guides written for performance, not curiosity. It's not illegal. It's not proof. But it's timing that makes it haunting. Because at that same time, Chris Watts was telling her he was almost free. He was saying they'd be together soon. And she was quietly preparing for something she never brought up later. Then came August 13th. The day of the murders. The day Chris backed his work truck into the driveway before dawn. While his family's names weren't yet in the headlines, Nichol was already in motion. She had wiped her phone, deleted the messages between her and Chris. She cleared her calls, her browser, and her digital trail. She said it was fear, not guilt. But the next morning, on August 14th, she searched again. Can police retrieve deleted text messages? She didn't just delete. She checked to see if it would work. She didn't just panic. She planned for what the police might ask next. And still, she said she didn't know. That she had no idea what had done. But her phone kept stacking moments, not after the crime, but before it. And those moments didn't add up to shock. They read more like preparation. Like someone editing their part of the story before the rest of the story came out. She had questions. Not about Shanann. Not about the kids. But about how long her digital footprint would stay behind. She said she didn't see any of it coming. But her screen lit up for weeks, search after search, page after page, like a second memory that refused to forget what she really wanted to know. Because even if she didn't say it out loud, her fingers told the truth. If no one ever saw your texts, your searches, your browser history, what story would your phone tell about you? For more than 6 hours, the FBI and Colorado Bureau of Investigation sat across from Nichol Kessinger, not as enemies, not even as suspects, but as professionals waiting to hear if the timeline made sense. She told them it did. That she had nothing to hide. That she was just as shocked as everyone else. She cried when she talked about the news. She apologized for being part of anything. She said over and over, "I didn't know," but then they pulled up the phone records. They asked about deleted calls. They brought up the browser searches. And suddenly, she stopped crying. Nichol told them she was scared, not of what happened, but of what people might think. She said, "I don't want my name ruined, not I want justice, not tell me what happened to those kids, just, I don't want to be hated," she said. "I didn't hurt anyone," but the agents weren't accusing her of hurting anyone. They were asking why her digital footprint had so many dead ends. She told them, "I might not be able to go outside for years, not because of guilt. Because of what people would assume." She talked about her reputation, her father's stress, the cameras that might be outside her apartment. For hours, she talked. But nothing she said matched what her phone had already said. They showed her Facebook screenshots. She said she never paid attention. They asked about the message deletions. She said she was panicking, that she just wanted space. Then she asked for a lawyer. Not because they accused her. But because the questions started to cut too close. Because the story she rehearsed was now bleeding into the parts she hadn't thought they'd check. She said she was trying to help. She said she had nothing to hide. But her voice cracked in places her story didn't. Her rhythm didn't match her words. And when asked direct questions, simple ones, yes or no, she filled the silence with more silence. Or she tried to. Because the room heard more than what she said. It heard what she avoided. What she skipped. What she corrected halfway through, or covered with nervous laughter. 6 hours passed. More than 200 questions were asked. And somehow, not a single answer sounded like a conclusion. Just circles. Just confusion. Just a woman who wanted to be free from the fire, without admitting how close she stood to it. She never confessed to anything. She never broke down, never admitted to helping, never claimed to see the crime coming. But she didn't walk out clean. She walked out quieter. Like someone who had said just enough to stay out of trouble. But not enough to silence doubt. If you were innocent, truly innocent, how much would you hold back? On August 15, 2018, Chris Watt sat in a small, quiet room at the Frederick Police Department. He had agreed to a polygraph. He smiled, signed the forms, and joked with the examiner. But the machine didn't laugh back. They told him before it started, "If you're lying, well, no," that he nodded. They asked him simple things. "Do you know where your wife is? Did you hurt Shanann?" He said no. The machine said otherwise. He failed the polygraph. Badly. And that's when the unraveling began. They brought in an FBI agent. They told him he needed to stop lying. Chris took a breath. And said, "I'll tell you, but I want to talk to my dad first." Even then, he couldn't face it alone. At first, he blamed Shanann. He said he found her smothering their daughters, so he killed her in a rage. He cried. He said it was a moment of madness. But they didn't believe him. And deep down, he knew they weren't supposed to. Because none of it was true. Not the rage. Not the rescue. Not the version that made him look like a man reacting, instead of planning. Eventually, the real confession came out, slow, fractured, almost quiet. He admitted he strangled his wife in their bedroom, while their children were still in the house. Then he wrapped her body in a sheet. He carried it past Bella and Celeste, his 2 daughters, and placed it in the back of his truck. Then he buckled them in. He drove all 3 of them, dead and alive, to a remote oil site owned by Anadarko Petroleum. It wasn't a short drive. It took 45 minutes. 45 minutes of silence, headlights, and 2 little girls in pajamas asking about their mother. When he got to the site, he buried Shanann in a shallow grave. Then he turned to the girls. One by one. And smothered them with their own blankets. No noise. No help. Just wind on the prairie, and oil tanks on the horizon. He never called 911. Never confessed until he was caught. He went home. He gave interviews. He pretended to worry. And all the while, he knew exactly what he had done. When investigators asked him why, he said it was for a new life. He said he believed Nichol wouldn't accept him with kids. Maybe, if he erased his past, he could start over. But she never asked for that. At least, not out loud. And he never asked her if she would have accepted the truth. He just assumed. And acted. And turned his own family into a barrier to be removed. Chris Watts didn't snap. He planned. He moved money. He sent love texts to his mistress while Googling wedding songs. He mapped out his escape, not from danger, but from responsibility. And when it all fell apart, he didn't cry for his daughters. He cried because he got caught. He said he did it for a new life, but who asked for it? Does a partner's silence make them part of the motive? She never went to trial. She was never arrested. Never stood behind a defense table or heard the words "you are hereby charged," but outside the courtroom she never entered. The sentence had already been handed down. It started online. First with whispers. Then hashtags. Then threats. Comment sections filled with people calling her every name they could think of: homewrecker, accomplice, liar. They posted photos of her, screenshots of her Google searches, maps of her neighborhood. Within days, someone leaked her home address. By the end of the week, her father's phone number was being shared like a trophy. People didn't just want answers. They wanted blood. And when Chris Watts stopped being useful, she became the next target. They didn't care that she had sat with the FBI for hours. They didn't care that she hadn't been charged. They didn't want nuance, or process, or law. They wanted someone to blame. The internet doesn't need evidence. It needs a villain. And she fit the part. A younger woman, in secret contact, with a married man whose family vanished. That was all they needed. More threats came in waves. Emails. Messages. Letters taped to fences. People called her employer, demanding she be fired. They made videos, podcasts, Facebook groups, entire Reddit threads dedicated to tearing apart her story. Strangers declared she should be charged with accessory to murder. Some said worse. And then, she disappeared. No formal goodbye. No press conference. No second interview. Just silence. Officials have never confirmed it publicly, but multiple reports suggest she entered witness protection. New name. New address. New life. If she's still in Colorado, no one knows. If she ever returned to a normal job, she'd never been recognized. And if she still thinks about what happened, no one's ever heard her say it out loud. She didn't kill anyone. But in the public square, that didn't matter. To many, she was the reason. The motive. The woman who should have known better. She wasn't tried in court. She was tried in comment sections. And the verdict came quickly. Was Nichol a victim of deception, or did the world just need someone to blame? This wasn't the first time a man murdered his family. And sadly, it wouldn't be the last. But when Chris Watts confessed, when he described how he ended the lives of the people who called him daddy, experts across the country said they had seen it before. Not the exact method, but the pattern. Psychologists call it family annihilation. A quiet, devastating category of crime where a man, usually middle-aged, seemingly normal, often described as gentle, destroys his entire household in one night. Not because he lost control, but because he wanted it. They do it for money, or shame, or because they feel trapped. But the most common reason is something harder to understand: the fantasy of total escape. The dream goes like this: start over. Erase everything. No more wife. No more debt. No more past. Just a clean slate. And sometimes, that fantasy includes another woman. When Chris had told investigators he wanted a new life, a simple life. One without judgment, without complications, without responsibility. One that he believed Nichol might want. But when he made his choice, it wasn't hers. He never asked her permission. He never gave her warning. He just took everything away. Did she trigger it? Or did he use her as a reason to do something he already wanted to do? Some say she was the spark. Others say she was the mirror, the thing that showed him what freedom looked like, even if it was never hers to give. What's clear is that the fantasy didn't stop at divorce. Chris didn't file papers. He didn't walk away. He chose violence. He turned his own daughters into obstacles. And he erased them like they were in the way. That's not love. That's control. That's an obsession dressed up as reinvention. Experts say men like Chris don't just snap. They plan. They rehearse. They tell themselves a story where everything makes sense, where the murder isn't a crime, but a solution. A reset button they believe they're entitled to press. But there's no version of this story that doesn't end in horror. No clean slate that begins with 3 shallow graves. No future built on the silence of children. And yet, people still ask about her. Nichol. Was she part of the motive, or just part of the moment? Was she the reward he promised himself? Or the illusion he chased while destroying everything real? We may never know exactly what she knew, or when. But what we do know is this: Chris Watts made every decision with full awareness. He calculated the timeline. He chose the method. And when it was done, he still texted her back like nothing happened. Some say she was the reason. Others say she was just the excuse. But the truth? It was never about love. It was about erasure. If someone changed their entire life for you, would that make you feel wanted, or afraid? In the end, 3 names stayed buried, but not forgotten. Shanann Watts. Bella Watts. Celeste Watts. A mother and 2 little girls, remembered not for how they died, but for how they lived. Chris Watts will never be free again. He confessed. He pled guilty. He was sentenced to 5 life terms, no parole, no appeals, no second chance. His world shrank to a prison cell, and the silence that follows every time a father betrays the very people who trusted him most. But this story was never just about him. Because when the headlines faded, when the trial was over and the verdict was read, there was one name people still whispered about: the woman who vanished without a trace. Nichol Kessinger didn't pull the trigger. She didn't carry a body. She wasn't charged with any crime. But in the eyes of the public, she didn't walk away clean either. She disappeared. No press statement. No closure. Just gone. Reports say she changed her name. Entered witness protection. Moved to another state. And maybe that's true. But no official has ever confirmed it. She didn't return to her job. She didn't show up to defend herself. And she hasn't been seen in public since 2018. No social media. No photographs. No trace. Some say she's rebuilding her life. Others believe she's still looking over her shoulder. Because even if the law cleared her, the world didn't. And there's a kind of guilt that doesn't come from what you did, but from what you were close enough to see. She didn't kill anyone. But her name will always be tied to those who died. That's the kind of legacy no one plans for. And it's the kind you can't run from, not completely. Is it possible to walk away from a murder, and still carry part of the blame? Some crimes end with a conviction. Others just disappear into silence. This story had both. And while the victims rest, and the killer rots, there's one name still hidden. Somewhere out there. Maybe watching. Maybe healing. Maybe haunted. Because some stories have no verdict. Only memory. There are some stories with no verdict. Only memory. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And remember, not every accomplice leaves fingerprints.
Publicly, but his alleged mistress, Nichol Kessinger, tells the Denver Post she doesn't believe a word he's saying.
Watts will learn his fate for killing his pregnant wife and 2 daughters. Shanann, who is from